Today, we're going to tackle one of the biggest stories in all of history, the Roman Empire. We're going to trace its epic journey from, this tiny city-state to a powerhouse that spanned the known world, and then dig into why it all came crashing down. Let's dive in. And that really is the question, isn't it? I mean, think about it. So many empires that came later, from Charlemagne all the way to the British, they all wanted to be the new Rome. Its legacy is it's baked into our language, our laws, our buildings, our whole culture. So, where does a story this big even begin? Well, it all starts with a mix of myth and history and a really dramatic shift away from kings to a totally new way of doing things. Okay, so the legend goes that Rome was founded way back in 753 BC by the twin brothers Romulus and Remus. For the first few centuries, the city was ruled by a series of kings. But the last one, a tyrant named Tarquin, he pushed the people just a little too far. So in 509 BC, they kicked him out and made a promise. Never again would a king rule in Rome. And just like that, the Roman Republic was born. So instead of a king, they came up with a new system, all for the Senate and the people of Rome. You've probably seen the letters, SPQR. Power was now split between two consuls. They were elected for just 1 year, which was a clever way to stop any single person from getting too powerful, and they governed alongside the Senate, which was basically an assembly of the city's most powerful families, who controlled the money and guided policy. Now, this new republic, well, it didn't stay small and quiet for long. For the next few hundred years, Rome was pretty much defined by constant, brutal warfare, expanding relentlessly, first across Italy and then way beyond. There were two major conflicts that really pushed Rome to the brink. First up was a fight against the Greek king Pyrrhus. And then came the big one, a century-long, knockdown, drag-out fight against its greatest rival, the massive seafaring empire of Carthage. And this is actually where we get a famous phrase. See, King Pyrrhus managed to beat the Romans in battle, not once, but twice. But his army took such a beating in the process that he supposedly said, "One more victory like that and we're done for." And from that, we get the term Pyrrhic victory. A win that costs you so much it feels like a loss. Rome's ability to just keep going was tested like never before during the Second Punic War. At the Battle of Cannae, the Carthaginian general Hannibal, an absolute military genius, surrounded and just annihilated a Roman army that was almost twice the size of his. The losses were unbelievable. This was more than a defeat. It was a scar on the Roman soul. So how in the world do you recover from something like that? Well, they got smart. They adapted. Instead of charging headfirst into another glorious battle, they switched to the Fabian strategy, basically a war of exhaustion. They'd harass Hannibal's supply lines, burn the fields around him, and just wear him down over time. It wasn't flashy, but man, it worked. But Rome never ever forgot that threat. There was this one senator, Cato the Elder, who ended every single speech he gave, no matter what it was about, with that exact phrase: Carthage must be destroyed. This obsession eventually led to a Third Punic War, where Rome finally wiped Carthage off the map in 146 BC, leaving them the undisputed masters of the entire Mediterranean. And here's the irony. With no major enemies left to fight on the outside, the Republic's incredible success actually started to tear it apart from the inside. The competition turned inward, and the politics between powerful men became deadly serious. A huge turning point here were the Marian reforms. A general named Gaius Marius started letting men without any land join the army, promising them a plot of land when they retired. And the effect this had? It was profound. Suddenly, a soldier's loyalty wasn't to the idea of Rome anymore. It was to the general who was going to pay him and guarantee his future. This basically created private armies inside the Republic. And this new professional army was an absolute beast on the battlefield. One of the keys to its success was this formation, the triplex acies, or triple line. You'd have the new guys up front, more experienced soldiers behind them, and then the hardened veterans in the back. It meant they could take an enemy's initial charge, then hit back with fresh troops, giving them incredible staying power in a fight. And all this political chaos wasn't happening in a vacuum. Roman society itself was changing. A great example is marriage. In the early Republic, most marriages were cum manu, which meant a wife's legal and financial control went from her father to her husband. But later on, the sine manu form got way more popular. This let women keep control of their own property, giving them a level of financial independence that was pretty rare in the ancient world. So this new loyalty to generals led directly to civil war. You had guys like Sulla literally marching their armies on Rome itself. Then you get the uneasy team-up of Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus. And finally, Caesar crosses the Rubicon River, starts a civil war, wins, and then gets assassinated. The Republic was officially dead. Out of all that chaos, one man came out on top: Caesar's adopted son, Octavian. He took the name Augustus and became Rome's very first emperor. And his reign kicked off something incredible: the Pax Romana, 2 whole centuries of relative peace and stability. This long peace created a truly connected world. I mean, the empire became this giant economic engine. It's kind of funny to think about, but you could say the empire ran on olive oil. Spain, for example, was basically turned into one massive olive farm, churning out millions of liters every year that were used for everything: cooking, lamps, even soap, all shipped to feed the huge city of Rome. But we have to be really clear about something. All this prosperity, all this peace, it was built on an absolutely brutal foundation. As the quote says, slaves were the operating system of the empire. From the silver mines to the grain fields, the entire imperial machine, the roads, the aqueducts, the monuments, it was all powered by the forced labor of millions of people. And it's during this Roman peace that a new religion was born in a small province called Judea. At first, the Romans just saw it as some weird, obscure cult, but Christianity quietly spread using the empire's amazing network of roads and sea lanes. And along the way, it faced horrific persecution from emperors like Nero, who famously blamed Christians for the Great Fire of Rome. Of course, no empire lasts forever. After centuries of being on top, a perfect storm of immense pressure from the outside and deep, fatal cracks on the inside started to bring the whole thing crashing down, at least in the West. This map shows you a really critical part of the story: this giant domino effect. See, in the 4th century, the Huns come storming out of the east. This pushes other tribes like the Goths and the Vandals out of their homelands. Fleeing for their lives, these groups pushed west, right up against the Roman borders, putting immense pressure on the frontiers. And on the inside, the empire was already rotting. It had been split in 2, the economy was in the tank, taxes were sky high, and just like before, the army was often more loyal to the guys paying them than to Rome. And then, in a twist of irony, Rome started hiring the very barbarians it was supposed to be fighting to defend its own borders. In its last 100 years or so, the empire went through another massive change. The Emperor Constantine made Christianity legal, and pretty soon it was the official state religion. But the decline didn't stop. In 410, the unthinkable happened. The city of Rome itself was sacked for the first time in 800 years. And then finally, in 476, the last emperor in the West was quietly removed. And that was that. But maybe we focus a little too much on the fall. As the historian Edward Gibbon famously wrote, maybe the real question isn't why the Roman Empire was destroyed. Maybe the real surprise, the truly amazing thing, is that it managed to last for so long in the first place.